If your New Year's resolutions are things like exercise more, get more organized, you might have set the wrong goal out there. We want you to live happy, but our resolutions might not be getting us there.
Studio 5 relationship coach Matt Townsend has identified 6 resolutions that will make us more happy.
Yeah.
All right, happiness, though, means different things to different people, right? Or is there one universal definition of happiness?
Well, what they're finding out is, there's a lot of different kinds of happiness, right? But and there's some great research on this, so we got to get this out right away. AuthenticHappiness.org is a website, and these are researchers that have been researching happiness. And when we put these New Year's resolutions together, it's always thinking we're going to be happy. If I could lose 10 pounds, then I'll be happy. If I could finish that degree, then I'll be happy. And then amazingly, what we find out is even if we lose the 10 pounds, we're still not happy. Because happiness is not just reaching pleasure and feeling good about ourselves. That's the fluffy happy. But there's kind of a long-term enduring happy that needs to be met, so we could create New Year's resolutions around the long-term sense of happiness. And I've got some ideas for you.
We can't wait.
First rule, this is what they found. People that are the happiest are mindful. Do you know what that means?
Mindful. They're aware, they're present, they're, right?
Their mind is full. They're actually in their mind.
Their mind is full.
So the first rule, and this is a great New Year's resolution, let's all move back into our head. Wouldn't that be great? Let's just pack the kids up and let's get everyone back in our head.
Move back into your head.
How many times have you gone somewhere, you got there, you don't even remember how you got there? How many times have you sat? We sat at a dinner last night at my dad's house for a Christmas dinner thing, and everyone's on their phones.
Oh.
And no one's mindful, no one's present. So what if we just set a goal, and I would literally make it this simple. This is a simple thing. To get back in your head is simple, we just forget about it. What if we set our alarm on our really nice phones, and it went off every hour, and we promised ourselves every time that that went off, we would stop within 5 or 10 minutes and actually go spend 2 or 3 minutes just being present in what's going on.
I like that.
That's a fairly doable goal. And what they're finding out, though, that people that are actually in their head feel more joy. If you are actually in the moment when you're with your children and being mindful with what they're doing, you're actually going to feel joy.
So it's not that from the happy person to the unhappy person necessarily their lives are that much different.
No.
It's how present they are.
Being present actually is something that creates happiness. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's fairly simple, okay? Number 2, guess what number 2 would be? I've brought this up a lot. Be more appreciative. Research shows people that understand and recognize how good they've got it and things that are good, and if you can recognize them, by the way, mindfully being present enough to know your blessings as they're happening, you actually feel happier. Isn't that weird?
So that's sort of like combining number 1 and number 2 together. You have an exercise for us to be more appreciative?
This is one of my favorite things, and it's called a gratitude activity. So go think back to somebody in your life that has seriously impacted your life, like somebody that made a major difference in your life. Write them a letter, a 300-word letter. That's all you got. Call them up on the phone, set up an appointment, take them to lunch, and read them the letter.
In person.
In person. And I'll bet you bucks, the research shows 1 to 3 months later, after that event, people rated their relationships and their life as significantly happier. 3 months after the letter. Simply because they're now starting to get, we have this kind of subtle guilt that's going on when we're not grateful.
Right.
So this actually gets us to start getting the gratitude out. I think you could do this every day. At the end of every night, what if you just looked through, as a family, sat together, knelt together, and just talked about what are 3 things we all feel grateful for today.
I love that.
And that helps get our family present today. Now that's a New Year's resolution. This isn't about losing 50 pounds. This is just about being present and grateful.
You talk about pleasures being kind of the fluffy happiness. So if we aren't focusing on that fluffiness, right, those pleasures, what are we focusing on instead?
What about your passion? So what if we started focusing on what we're passionate instead of what just pleases us? One of the things I think that happens to us that saps and steals our happiness is we're so pleasure-oriented. We think a really good meal is going to make the difference. We think a really good kind of self-centered movie that we're going to go watch will make the difference. But what the research shows is when you're doing something you're passionate about, that you actually love to do, and that best way to know this is, does time stand still when you're doing it? So what is something that if you had the time and you sat down and did it, time would stand still to do it? Isn't that weird? Now the irony for me, it's like reading relationship stuff. that actually timestamps. Isn't that weird?
You are weird.
Now, you know why? Because that gets into the next one. So what I'm finding out about my own life is I actually know my own strengths. So research shows you've got to know what your 5 strengths are.
How come?
Because if we all spend our lives operating on everything that's not a strength, we usually won't feel happy. So if you can start engaging the things you do well, we think happiness is being well-rounded at doing effectively at everything. But the research doesn't prove that out. Research says when you actually know what you're good at and you spend time doing it really well, you actually feel happier.
Which is interesting because most resolutions are based around your weaknesses, right?
Exactly.
What you're doing wrong. So that's a totally 360 flip.
That's right. So what if I found what I was passionate about and what I was strong on? There's a great website you go to, what was it called? AuthenticHappiness.org. This is from Penn State University. On there, there's an assessment you take that has 25 character, what do they call them? Like character traits, basically, strengths. You take it. It takes 280 questions you have to ask, I believe. You go through all of it, and at the end of it, it will rank your strengths. I found that I have 5 strengths, and my 5 strengths, ironically, are what I happen to be spending my life on. By the way, that's not because I'm great. That's because I'm lazy. But part of it is that it was easier for me to do what I love to do, so I just did it, and I figured out a way to make a life about it. But every single one of them, I now realize why I love getting up and going to work. I love learning and continuous improvement. So go find your strengths. Once you know your strengths, then you start to create a life that operates around that.
That's the easy part there. In fact, we'll hook you up with that website. If you're trying to find your strengths, you can find it on our website, as well as some other tips that Matt has on setting some New Year's resolutions. You've got a big Valentine's date night coming up.
This is big, Kay. This is where we just bring down the house. And what it is, it's our date night, and it's a concert. And you can see the dates there, January, February, and on Valentine's Day. We're hooking up with Peter Breinholt in Ogden and St. George, and Hillary Weeks here in Salt Lake City. It's $50 per couple. You come, we spend an hour where I teach you how to reignite the spark. Then they'll do a concert for an hour. Tons of fun, but get on. If you enter the Studio 5 code, you get 10% off.
Nice.
And sign up quickly because their seats are going fast.
I remember last year you did something
We
similar.
sold out.
They went really quickly. So be sure
Get
to
there now, and it's a great
book your
way to
seats.
fix your partner without even knowing.
Watch Matt bring down the house.